Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for being here on this Sunday of MAG. I know a lot of people are, heading out and going home and everything, so I appreciate you guys spending your time and being here. So, my name is Dominick Dzietczyk, and today we will be discussing Woodwind Repair 101. Now, there's going to be a lot of information flying around in this slideshow. At the end, I'll give you guys an opportunity to enter your email and get a copy of the slideshow if there's any information that you miss. And if you guys have your instruments, for those instrumentalists, you can feel free to take them out and follow along with some of the information, because I'm going to be talking about like the different parts of an instrument and kind of different parts and what to look for on an instrument. So let's get started. So first of all, about me. My name is Dominick Dzietczyk. I'm a woodwind repair apprentice at New York City Woodwinds, a premier shop in New York that services clarinets, flutes, and saxophones. I'm a woodwind doubler as well, because in order to repair very well, you also have to be able to play all the instruments. Do you have to be a professional at them? No, but just enough to be able to feel any issues and to understand how to properly play so that the players, when they get their instruments, can feel that things feel as they should. I'm a manager with the MCO, the MAGFest Community Orchestra, so many of you might have seen the performance yesterday at 10 or have just seen me running around like a madman. So outside of this, I'm also a social media manager with VGM Jam Sessions NYC. We are a jazz-focused jam session in New York City that does video game music. And with my repair shop, I've had the opportunity to repair instruments for people such as Chad Lefkowitz-Brown, Chris Potter, Bob Shepard, Lenny Pickett of The Tonight Show, and Jasper Dukes. Here's a couple pictures of people that I've had the opportunity to meet and repair with. And that's one of the great things about my shop, is that, I get to see a lot of professional players that are out in the scene, and you see a lot of them online and making a lot of noise in the scene, and just being able to help them out is a true blessing. So first of all, I want to talk about the different kinds of shops that you can find. So there are two kinds of shops generally, a boutique and a general shop. First of all, we're going to talk about a general shop. So these are your chains and your more larger shops, like Music and Arts, Sam Ash when they had physical locations, and typically these offer high volume repair work. So a lot of schools will send their instruments to these because they're designed to take in a whole bunch of instruments, like dozens and dozens of instruments from multiple schools. And they'll have hundreds of instruments in their backlog, and they provide a wide range of services. A lot of them do both woodwinds and brass, and typically service those student and intermediate instruments. On top of that, they're just known for having a wide selection of products. And to contrast this, the shop that I work for, New York City Woodwinds, we are a boutique shop. We are a specialty shop designed to focus on a specific niche. So our niche is saxophones, clarinets, and flutes. Other shops might focus solely on saxophones, solely on flutes, solely on double reeds, things like that. So these are better options for professional players because you're getting that specialty care and special attention from somebody who's dedicated themselves to just master one instrument. On top of that, these shops also have a more curated product selection, just something to consider. So, no matter which repair shop you go to, there are many different kinds of jobs that they offer. So, we will be discussing that up next. First of all, we have what's known as a playing condition. This is also known as a tune-up by many shops. This kind of work gets billed by the hour. In these, you're just meant to get an instrument quickly up and playing. So let's say, for example, you've got a gig on Friday night. It's Tuesday. You're like, oh, my instrument doesn't play well. Uh-oh. So you take it to a shop. You say, hey, I got a gig on Friday. Can you help me out? So what a shop will do is they will take that, get it playing, get it as good as it can be for what it is, and get it back to you. Turnaround is fast, and it's generally the cheapest option because it's built by the hour. Now, because of this, it's not a guarantee that the work will stay for months and months, simply because that repair technician is taking in an instrument that they didn't themselves repair a lot of the time. They're taking somebody else's work, somebody else's attention and care, and somebody else's procedures, and trying to figure out how to get an instrument to play based on those, as opposed to somebody who knows their work, knows their routine, knows how they do things. Now, it's recommended to get a playing condition every few months or whenever issues are felt. Now, next, above that, we have what's known as a clean oil and adjust. So in this, the instrument first is fully disassembled. Then the keys and the body are professionally cleaned. None of the old pads are removed, but the old oil is cleaned off, and new oil is put in when the instrument is assembled. Leaks are addressed along with all other issues. It's recommended that this is done usually 1 year to 18 months. Now this is because you want the oil in the instrument to be as fresh as possible. Now we don't have to go and oil it every single day or anything like that, but generally when you don't oil an instrument and you let it sit for months and years, that oil will end up turning black and it starts clear. Now that's just because dirt, environmental issues are getting into the instrument, and on top of that, while the instruments are vibrating, little pieces of metal will slowly come off the instrument, and that's normal for any instrument. So it's recommended that this is done every year or every 18 months. So looking at the clean oil and adjust process, I have some pictures to go along with it. So first here is the disassembly. So also, sorry for my pajama pants in the middle photo. I did this repair late at night. So this is a saxophone clean oil and adjust, and this goes the same for saxophones, flutes, clarinets, all woodwind instruments. So you start off by taking off the keys and everything on the instrument. So this middle picture is all the keys taken off, and that's them all laid out on my bench. So this third picture is me going through and cleaning all the pads and cleaning everything that's on the instrument, and just making sure that when I put it back together, all the old oil is removed, like I said, and everything is nice and clean. So after that, the body is cleaned, everything else is cleaned and got ready to put back together, and the final product is this one right here. This kind of a job usually takes me about 4 to 5 hours, depending on the instrument. If it's something that's in really bad shape, then it'll probably take me closer to like 8. So next, from a clean oil and adjust, we have what's known as an overhaul or a restoration. Now this is the most involved job. This is a complete reset of the instrument, so when you receive an overhaul, it should feel like new, if not sometimes even better than the factory. I know sometimes some factories actually don't use the best options when it comes to what they put in the new instruments. So a company like Buffet that does a lot of clarinets, a lot of people actually prefer to get their clarinets overhauled even when they just bought them, because they feel as though the pads that Buffet uses and a lot of the materials aren't actually that great, which is weird for a new instrument. But like I said, in an overhaul, all the pads, corks, and materials are replaced. Any crack, any dent work, any soldering is all done. And because of this intensive process, it's expensive and it takes a long time. So some shops in New York City, when they have a lot of overhauls, it could take you 6 months to get your instrument, which is not ideal, obviously, as a player, but you know, that's just what happens when people get busy. This kind of work is typically recommended when instruments are old, in rough shape, you know, it's been sitting around in a closet for 30 years, it's probably not going to play that great when you take it out of a closet that's been sitting for that long. So I have 2 examples of instruments that I've overhauled, and I wanted to show you those. So this is a Busher alto saxophone that I overhauled. As you can see on the left, there are literal cobwebs in that instrument. So I took that and I turned it into the instrument that's on the right. So that instrument, as you can see even on the inside, on the photo on the left, you can't even see that it's silver plated. It's just brown and gross, and that instrument is 100 years old, so I was very lucky that it turned out so great. And here's a clarinet that I overhauled, and it is actually my own personal clarinet. So in a clarinet overhaul, you take it apart, you oil the wood, you clean off the wood, then you change the pads, the corks, and all the materials, just like every other woodwind overhaul. So one step below in overhaul, we have what is known as a repad. So a lot of shops offer this. The shop that I work for doesn't, and there's a reason, and I will tell you that in a second. So the repad is one step below of an overhaul. Where an overhaul changes everything, a repad is solely focused on changing out the pads on an instrument. So typically it's not done where you change the corks and the materials. You kind of just make do with what's on the instrument. And a lot of the times, specific things aren't addressed on the instrument, like small dents, small soldering issues, and things like that. So our shop doesn't do repads simply because if you're gonna, a repad is anywhere from like $1,000, for example. If you're gonna get a repad for $1,000 and an overhaul for $1,500, it's more advisable to spend that extra money and really get a new instrument as opposed to something that's not cleaned, not, taken and really done with specific adjustments in mind. So those are the types of jobs that a repair shop will offer, and now I want to get into the actual nitty-gritty of instrument repair. And first of all, I want to start with instrument design. How many people here don't actually play a woodwind instrument? Oh wow, okay, so everybody here will have more of an understanding of this information, but either way, this will get into specifics so that later when we talk about actual issues, we understand why those issues happen and what causes them. So whether you have a saxophone, a flute, a clarinet, oboe, a bassoon, a whatever, they share a lot of parts in common. They all have pads, pad cups, and some kind of adhesive that goes behind those pads. They all have corks, whether they're neck corks, body corks, things like that. They all have a cork somewhere. They also all have adjustment materials. If people have instruments and would like to take them out, you can actually look at all these parts on your own instruments. So, and on top of that, we have tone holes and posts. So, all pads on a woodwind instrument are designed to cover a tone hole. So the tone hole is where the sound comes out of. Unless you're playing the lowest notes on your instrument, like a low B flat on saxophones, a low B or C on a flute, then the air actually comes out of the tone holes rather than on the bottom of the instrument. So in order to get those notes to come out properly, a pad must cover the tone hole. So what can happen is the pad can not seal due to the fact that it's not actually covering perfectly, as you can see in this image that I have. So the pad can hit in the front, like the top left, it can hit in the back, like the top right, or it can hit perfectly in the middle. Now, pads are all mounted with some kind of adhesive, and in flutes, they often use shims instead of the adhesives. So behind saxophone and clarinet pads, or pads that don't use shims like on a flute, they use what is called shellac. Now shellac is actually beetle poop. So we have devised a system, obviously shellac is not uncommon in instrument repair, but shellac is what is preferred for instrument repair, and so is hot glue. Now there's a widespread debate whether it's whether it's better to use shellac or hot glue. My shop only really uses shellac as opposed to hot glue. The only time that it's better to use hot glue is if you commonly play outside, because shellac has a lower melting point than hot glue. And because of that lower melting point, if you leave an instrument that has shellac in it in a car over the summer, it'll heat up, and that'll actually cause things to shift just because the instrument is sitting in a car. So moving on from pads, we have corks, felts, etc. So the corks and the felts are used to determine the height of the keys and help make make the instrument seal. So what that means is, for saxophones, like the picture on the left, we see that there are little red felts right here. So these felts are what help dictate the key height, because when the pad is sitting, because when the key is activated and the spring is activated, the instrument will rest on that felt. And the thickness of the felt will determine how much the instrument is open, how much the pad, is open or closed. And on the right here, this is clarinet keys and what corks they typically receive. So through this, these different corks and cork thicknesses help determine how much the instrument is opened when you press on a key. Moving along, we have hinge rods and screws. So the keys on instruments, no matter the woodwind instrument, are held using rods or screws. These rods or screws must be secure without any movement. This diagram right here shows kind of what that looks like without any keys or anything. So as we can see, we have 2 posts here, and we have 1 rod going in between. Now, we can say that this is also a key, and on both ends of this we have screws. So these, over time, will begin to create motion and movement, and that's what something like this looks like, where there's a little gap, and you can see that hinge tube, that little piece of silver in there. And what that means is that this is not completely, it's not completely secure, so it will rock while the instrument is put together. And lastly, we have corks. So we have neck corks, we have body corks, we have bell corks, and these corks are used to keep an instrument together. So moving right along, now that we've discussed the different parts of a woodwind instrument, let's go ahead and talk about some of the issues on a woodwind instrument. First of all, we have pad leaks. When a pad is not properly mounted, and when the adjustment material, like the corks and the felts that I showed earlier, are out of adjustment, this will create a leak. Now what the leak means is that air is escaping out of the tone hole. So we don't want any leaks when we're repairing. This is because it creates resistance, and it will actually affect the tuning, because it is not creating a complete seal, and air is coming out of a hole that it's not supposed to when you're playing a specific note. So it's like when you're playing an A on a flute or on a saxophone, and the B key is leaking, the air will come out of both of the B and the A, instead of just going through both of them and out of the next available tone hole. So the fixes to this are typically supposed to, I wouldn't recommend doing this at home, but in order to fix this, we add or remove adjustment material or fix the timing, and we shift the pad to create even coverage. So if something like this was leaking out here in the front, we would typically tip the back of the pad so that it tipped a little bit forward and covered this front. And in a situation like this, we would fix the timing so that when the primary key is pressed, the secondary key is also moving and covering the hole at the exact same time. Now the next issue that we have is key fitting. So keys, like I said earlier, are not to move when the instrument is together and everything is screwed in properly. Now this can cause, in some cases, if it's over adjusted, a key to be stuck and not moving. And in cases when it's loose, it'll cause things to rattle, and it'll make things not close properly because things are getting shifted while you're playing. So if it's not secure, maybe one time it'll move and hit a little to the left, or maybe it'll hit a little to the right of the tone hole, and that will cause an issue. Moving right along, cork issues. When a cork is ripped, loose, or too tight, that will cause an air leak. The video on the right here is of a clarinet that I had assessed. Let me go back and let that play again. So this is a cork on the right that is too loose. As you can see, the bell is shifting while I'm rocking the bell against the cork. Now that should not happen. If a cork is too loose, it can actually cause an instrument to fall apart. So, you can take your clarinet, hold it upright, and next thing you know, the bell comes off and hits the floor. Obviously, you don't want that to happen because it can cause a crack or, cause something to chip on like a plastic clarinet. So, it causes an air leak like this on a saxophone. This is a neck that is not properly fit, and that little gap right here will cause air to go through there instead of right through the tube, and it'll cause a leak because the air is not moving where it's supposed to, straight through the neck. And along with that, we have miscellaneous instrument issues. These are cracks, these are soldering issues, and these are bends. So cracks cause air leakage, simply because the instrument is, simply because the crack is creating an extra hole where it's not supposed to be. Wood, plastic, and metal can all crack. If metal cracks, you need to solder it. If plastic cracks, you need to glue it back. And with wood, you can actually put pins in the wood, and what that does is it closes the wood and helps push it back together. And then you take that, you glue it, and then you clean that up. Solder. So this on the right here is an issue of soldering. So due to the vibrations and the way that instruments are designed, things vibrate. Eventually, a solder will fail. Now, how quickly that takes depends on the quality of the solder, how much is in there, and everything like that. But when there's a soldering issue like this, it causes the key to come apart, and that'll cause things to not be lined up and things like that. Along with that, we have bends. Posts, guards, and keys can all bend because brass is a weak material. So sometimes things have to be bent back into place and put back, to how they look. Next, I want to talk about recommended tools that you guys can keep at home. So I have my tool chest here, and I'm going to show you guys many of these tools. Up first, we have a leak light. So this is just an LED light strip. You can get these on Amazon, very cheap. I would recommend, you can even just get like the LEDs that people put up in their rooms or on shelves or anything like that. Even then, those work perfectly fine. But LED light strips help to expose the leaks on an instrument, because where light is showing, that means that air is leaking. Next up, we have lemon pledge. So, yes, lemon pledge. So, you can clean your furniture with this, but it actually works very well on instruments. So I clean all of my pads with lemon pledge because the pads are made out of leather. So something like lemon pledge gets in there and helps hydrate the leather, gets rid of any dirt, and refreshes it and makes it like new. Because over time, that leather will dry. So dry leather will not seal, and it'll just be really stiff. And you want a little bit of give in that leather to help when you close the key. Next up, we have key oil. So there's multiple kinds of key oil. We have something like this, which is liquid key oil, and that goes on the hinge tubes and the rods. And something like this is more of a paste, and that would go in between the screws. So there are multiple kinds of key oil. Here we have heavy key oil that's more recommended for saxophones, medium for clarinets and bassoons, and light key oil for flute and oboes. Now the difference between these key oils is the viscosity. Also, because of that viscosity, it helps take more space. So when you have something like a flute, it's very small space in the keys and everything like that. And with the saxophone, there's a larger space in the keys. And so the different oils and the different viscosities help take that, help fill that gap and make sure that the instrument operates quietly and efficiently. Sometimes an instrument will stick because it doesn't have any oil in it. Next up, we have spring hooks.
My life with tools.
We all relate, take your time.
Yeah.
I'm so out of it that I think I just froze my brain while I was waiting.
There's a loading screen.
Yep.
This is
Anyways, I'm not going to keep searching. So I have a picture of the spring hook right here. I guess it's a good thing that I have the picture here because I can just use that instead of searching for mine. So these spring hooks actually look a lot like crocheting hooks in a way. for those of you that crochet, in that they have a little thing at the end that helps to hold the spring. So they have little divots in them on the end points, and those little divots we can use to kind of poke at the spring and to help, take it out of the spring hook or put it back in. I recommend that you guys have a bunch of flat screwdrivers. Typically, instruments aren't made with any Phillips heads or any other kinds of screwdrivers, so just flat screwdrivers. A plier is good, just a simple needle nose plier. I know I have this. Just a typical needle nose plier. Now we use these so we can grab onto rods, or if you need to grab something to bend it or anything like that. Needle nose are the best because they have a short end to them, so it's not super fat on the end and can get into small tight spaces. Now the last thing I have here is plumber's Teflon tape. So you can get these at any hardware store. They're very cheap. And what this Teflon tape does is you can help put it on corks that are loose. So if your cork is rocking, if your cork is moving, you can use the Teflon tape to put a little more material and to wrap it around a little more. Next up, I want to discuss maintenance tips. So it's recommended to bring your instrument to the shop at least once a year for a clean oil adjust. Now it's recommended to do that because, like I said earlier, a clean oil and adjust will help make your instrument feel like new. Again, a clean oil adjust is a great thing. A clean oil adjust is a great thing once a year. Next up, swab your instrument. How many people here actually swab their instruments? How many people have their hands raised and are lying? Exactly. So every time that you finish playing, you need to swab your instrument. Oh, do we have a question or something?
Yeah, is that just when you take the cloth?
Yes, yep. On
yeah,
flutes, yep. Just take that and
Yeah, I do that then.
saxophones, you take the little thing, you put it through one end, turn it over, and things like that. So swabbing your instrument will help get all of the moisture out. With moisture in instruments, when they dry, it'll cause things to shift. It'll cause things to get swollen and then, retract a little bit. When the leather gets wet, the leather will swell when it's wet, and then it will end up drying a little thinner. When you swab your instrument, it'll cause green gunk and buildup. That's kind of what we see on instruments. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there a specific type of swab you would recommend for instruments? Because I play oboe and I was always told to use like a turkey feather, but...
Interesting. I've seen swabs of silk, swabs of cloth. I prefer using more of a cloth swab simply because I feel like those pick up the moisture better. I've seen so many silk swabs and it's I don't know, I feel like the silk kind of grabs a little bit of moisture, but the silk is too thin also. It's it just goes right through. I like a little bit of give to it in a way to where the cloth will grab the extra moisture. But swab, you have another question?
Yeah, for saxophones, right? Or I guess for clarinets or any string instrument where you use that weighted
Yeah.
thing where you pull it through the instrument. How many times do you recommend doing that per instrument? Because I only use it once because I always feel that after I pull out once, it's already soaking wet or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's makes sense to swab more than once.
I definitely would recommend doing it more than once, even if it comes out a little wet. That kind of putting it back in is not going to really make a difference.
Okay.
It's not going to.
Re-wet it. Right?
Yeah, it's not going to re-wet it to a point like how it is when you're done playing.
Okay.
I think multiple times is good. You can always just look through the instrument as well to kind of see if you see droplets or anything like that too. And if you see water droplets and things, then maybe you go through it again.
Okay.
It's also recommended to oil and polish the instrument every few months. So, like I said, you can get your own key oil, and I will actually show you guys kind of how to put on key oil and things like that. And polishing the keys is also a great thing. If you have a silver flute, if you have silver clarinet keys, Yep, right there.
Silver polish.
Silver polishing cloth. There we go. So just polishing it will help prevent tarnish. You know, we want to take care of our instruments. We want to make sure that they last a long time. They're expensive. I mean, it's stereotypical for a jazz musician to not take care of their instrument. Working in a repair shop, it's like I see so many jazz players and their instruments are just like practically green, and I'm just like, come on, you know. They said, oh, you have a question?
I do have a question. How often did you say you should use the silver polish cloth?
Yeah, every few months. I mean, like maybe once a month or something.
Okay. Can you overdo it?
No.
Okay.
The only way that you can overdo silver is if you were to take like a buffing wheel to it. So you're like, it's because what buffing does is buffing takes off a little bit of that silver plating. So it can help expose the brass underneath the silver or something like that.
Okay.
But oiling and polishing every few months, I will show you guys how to do something like that. Wooden instruments, you have to watch the humidity and the season changes. We are in what's known as crack season, because when the humidity drops and things get cold and you go from cold outside to hot room to cold outside to hot room, eventually that will cause the wood to crack, because the wood expands and shrinks against the grain, and eventually the grain of the wood just gives. And lastly, don't wait if you feel problems with your instrument. Question?
On the wooden instrument humidity, what's the best-ish temperature and humidity for general storage? Like, what should we keep the apartment at for?
My repair shop keeps its humidity around, I think, like 55%.
Okay.
I know, like, my own personal house, sometimes I've seen, I think, get as low as like 30. So, but just because you're not in that range doesn't mean that you're going to have a problem.
But just for long-term longevity of the instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the same as books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And with wooden instruments, don't put it by a heater.
Yep, stop.
A lot of people.
That is good to say.
You say duh, but a lot of people would be surprised. You know, you see an instrument in the shop and someone goes, man, my clarinet cracked. And they go, yeah, I was sitting by the heater and like I keep it out so that I can practice. And then you're like, yeah, well, why is it by the heater? That's just gonna cause, you know, heater in a window, cold, hot problems. And lastly, don't wait if you feel problems. Now, the last part of this presentation is going to be how to actually get into the trade. So, I'm very fortunate that I have been able to find apprenticeship opportunities. So that's one option that you guys can take. You guys can see if there's a local shop that will help and let you guys do an apprenticeship. But along with that, I have a bunch of other options that, you know, range in. So we have YouTube channels. Here are 4 YouTube channels that I recommend that I've spent hours just while I'm bored sitting and I watch them. We have Wes Lee Music Repair. He's a guy out in the Midwest that does a lot of instrument repair. He's a generalist, so a lot of his videos will do brass, woodwinds, you know, and everything in between. We have Matt Stower Music Repair. So he is a saxophone-specific technician, and he is incredibly detailed in his videos. He goes to like the micro detail and talks about every little thing and every possibility and things like that. We have the Brass and Woodwind Shop, which, as the name suggests, is just another general guy who talks about both brass and woodwind instruments. And we have JL Smith Co. They're one of the companies that we actually get materials from, but they have a lot of old videos that cover repair. Now there are 2 books that I would recommend. The Complete Woodwind Repair Manual by Reg Throp and the Instrument Repair Manual by Eric Brand. So a bunch of repair schools actually use the Eric Brand and the Reg Throp books. But you guys can, you know, anybody can take the book and understand. A lot of them have diagrams. I know especially the Complete Woodwind Repair Manual is full of diagrams on every little page. So you can see what the diagrams show, how things should look, and how things are done, and like things like that. The Instrument Repair Manual is a very specific book, or it's a very broad book, sorry, that covers brass and woodwind, and even actually mouthpiece refacing. So I'm actually reading this book to understand and learn about mouthpiece refacing, so I can practice that. Well, there are local courses. You know, depending on where you guys live, you can see if a local college or community college with music programs have any repair courses. There are some specific colleges around the country that are certified to teach instrument repair. There are only like 5 in the country. These are certified by the National Association of Professional Band Instrument Repair Technicians. And if anybody is interested in getting in the trade, you know, you can attend this school. They're only like a year program typically for these, and they're done through like community colleges, so a lot of aid and help is available to get students in. And on top of that, Music Medic courses. So Music Medic is another website that does a lot of repair videos. They actually have a YouTube channel, Music Medic. They sell a lot of materials and tools and everything like that. But they are based in North Carolina, and they actually run courses throughout the year at their location. So they'll take in like a certain amount of people, come in and they'll do a flute basics, they'll do a saxophone basics, they'll do like advanced clarinet, you know, and where they'll show how to repair a crack or something. And so these multiple courses can help somebody, if they want to take like 5 days, go out to North Carolina to their facilities and learn. And lastly, buying repair horns. You know, if you go on eBay and you find like a $100 horn, you can just take it apart, ruin it, know you're not going to play it, but you're going to learn something from it. So that's it for this presentation. But now I want to actually take out some instruments that I have and show you guys my process of looking at an instrument, and to show you guys how you can fix things and fix issues that arise in your house. Actually, first, before we do that, do we have any questions?
So at what point would you, so for people that want to repair stuff at home, at what point would you say, you know, maybe you can probably do it on your own and you should be fine, versus like, you should take this to the shop, don't do it yourself?
Yeah, so I will kind of discuss that more with an actual instrument, because I will show you kind of how things are done, and I'll be like, well, this is not something I'd recommend to do, but like small things like seeing if a key, you know, if a key is too tight and you gotta unscrew something, you know, something like that is good, or you know, oiling an instrument, or cleaning an instrument, or putting the Teflon tape on a cork to help fix it. Stuff like that I would recommend, but things like heating up, because we actually use a lot of heat and flame in repair, so things like that I would not recommend unless you have experience and have like talked to somebody about. Questions?
How difficult is it to install a G-disc on
A G-disc on a flute? That's something that I would recommend to take to a technician, simply because like you have to make sure that the flute, the tone hole is the right size, and so, you know, ordering a disc or something might not be the right size, and so taking it to a professional, they'll be sure to measure it, have options for the discs and things like that. Yep, in the back.
When looking at the, like mentioning you should oil and polish every couple months and stuff, would that change depending on if it's an instrument that is played often versus an instrument that isn't played as much?
Yeah. I think that if you're not playing an instrument often, that's when you can kind of go longer periods of time. But if you're playing it every day for multiple hours, you know, if you're a touring musician, then you will just have to take it in maybe more often. You will have more issues that arise just because time. All right. Any questions? All right. And if you guys actually want this presentation, I have a QR code to a Google form that I set up, and it will ask for your email, and I can get that email to you. So if you showed up late or anything, then I can send the presentation, and you can have all the information at your home. In the meantime, I will get set up to show you repairs. Okay, so one of the department heads here with the community orchestra, Alex, he actually left me this instrument this morning. I have not seen this instrument at all. First of all, I didn't even know it was So I'm going to probably switch off the microphone for this so I don't have to keep going in towards the microphone and out. Hot take, I actually don't like these, and that is a good thing that Alex has this in this instrument so I can explain. So a lot of people, saxophone players, have probably seen these before. These are spit rods. So typically, for storage, you can find these in, a lot of people prefer these actually because they think that, it helps absorb all the moisture and you kind of can avoid swabbing. But the issue that I find with these is that they get gross. I mean, I'm touching this, I don't know how gross it is. I have touched dozens of these in my time as a technician, and every time I try and throw these away. I don't really see a benefit to them as opposed to like putting it in the instrument, taking it out, and then storing it somewhere else. I would not recommend storing these inside of an instrument.
What's the reason for it? Like besides that it's gross, like would it
Because it keeps the moisture in the instrument as opposed to taking the moisture out of it.
Okay.
And so that moisture will mess up the pads and kind of get things to be gross because it just won't dry properly. Okay, there are plenty of issues I can. So when a saxophone is properly repaired, it has a click, like it has a pop to it. Each note should have an individual pop. And so, pressing these keys, they don't have a pop, as opposed to something like that. You can hear a definite closure and a definite pop. Something like this just feels, it sounds very muddy. Does that come across on the mic?
It does.
Yeah.
Good. Now I wonder if there's a mouthpiece. Okay. So with this cork, looking at this, so we can see that the cork just slides right in. So there's no it catches here, but before then, it kind of just slides right through. And that would mean that the cork itself is very thin at the top, and then it gets very thick at the bottom. So where I was talking about using the plumber's tape, we would, if your whole cork feels like this, and you can't really get it to stay put, I would recommend wrapping it in the plumber's tape till it kind of catches and stays tight.
I have a quick question about that. So I was taught maybe some not very good things back in high school, but how often should we wax before putting it on or grease the cork grease?
Every couple, that's a tough question because there's no general this is when you should and shouldn't. I would just say every couple of weeks.
I was told every time I played the instrument and it got all
I think every time is too excessive. I think every 5 sessions or something, or 20 hours of playing. I don't know, something like that is more of a good guideline. And so this cork actually, I totally forgot. So I also am going to use, how can I mirror this display? Oh, here we go. Mirror the display. Duplicate. Great. So, hi. I'm going to use a camera to help show you guys things. So, this cork is ripped. So this cork will need to be replaced. I felt that while I was taking this, I was wiggling this cork and realizing that it was moving. You can see it go up and down, up and down. So this kind of cork will be replaced. This is actually a repair that if you buy an extra instrument, a second instrument, you can actually learn to replace a cork and do it yourself. That's something that I would recommend practicing before you do it on an instrument that you care about. But for instruments that you don't care about, it's very easy to actually replace a cord. Okay, so here is the leak light. Now, the leak light is used commonly in saxophones to help show leaks. So, something like these palm keys. These palm keys are actually sealing, because what you see, there is no light coming out of it until I press that key. So when the key is open, you have light escaping, and when the key is closed, the air is moving as it should. Now, if I was to be really specific, you see how it's there's light on one side but not the other? Now, the aim is for pads to close perfectly everywhere all at the same time. This is because, especially with like the actual regular keys, you don't want to, your fingers are going to stop at a certain point. Now, when your fingers stop, there's a chance that you think you're closing the key, but actually you're not. So, going through this instrument more, so when I press this key right here, this is a timing issue. As I explained earlier, we're pressing one key, this is closing, now this is not closing. That's because the materials that are placed both here and on the back are improper. So what's happening is we're getting this to close and this not to close. Now let me see if I can find key fitting issues. Yes, I can. That was very fast. Okay, so key fitting issues. So here is the actual rod. Now let me actually take it out so I can show what a rod looks like. Where did I put my screws? Here's my screws. Oh gosh, are these stuck? So that's another reason why general maintenance is recommended, because things will get stuck over time, because the metal is rusting, the moisture is in the instrument, and that'll cause things to stick. Rods get stuck all of the time. Yeah, this is tight. There we go. If a rod was actually completely stuck and I couldn't move it at all, I have to heat up the rod so I can, expand the metal and help get it to move a little more. Very stuck. Oh. Let me try a different key. These are all so stuck.
So one place that I found to get cheap instruments, if you want to just look at them and see what their anatomy is like, I got one on Facebook Marketplace that was somebody's kid's clarinet that their kids stepped on. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll pay $10 for that. Sure.
You can find them at Goodwill and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also
Yep.
shopgoodwill.com. That basically has an auction.
Okay. Please tell me this one actually. Oh my gosh, all of these are so stuck.
What are you trying to show us? The keys have performance anxiety.
Okay, I'm not going to keep trying that. But that is a perfect learning opportunity. That sometimes things get too stuck. You know, I would sit probably and get, you know, I would probably heat that up and try and get that to be loose and everything, but I'm not going to do that here. Okay.
I do have a bit of a question. You mentioned rust. What the heck do you do if it does rust?
So a lot of the time the rust is on the surface and not actually inside. So if a rod is rusted,
I've got it rusted in the middle of this one, that's why I asked.
can I actually see that?
Yeah, sure, it's bad. This got left out by accident, and it's horribly rusted on the middle of the inside.
More light.
Thought it would be a nice example.
Yeah, and that's why it's, oh, so you're talking about like inside the body too.
Yep.
So that will just happen. So there's not really much that you can do about things like that. That's kind of just the wear inside of it, and it kind of just stays like that. It doesn't really affect the playability. So that's not going to change the playability of the instrument too much. It's more just of a cosmetic thing.
I think there's another question. Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
That reminds me, Sarah. Forgive me if you already like went through this, but like, I'm just curious. How do you like prepare like a dent, especially if it's a really bad dent? Because like I don't have a dent on my instrument right now, thank God. But like,
So a dent is something that you would want to bring to a shop.
Yeah.
Because for like flutes and saxophones, what we have is we have like giant metal rods that we hook up to a vise, and then you take the instrument, you put it in that rod, and then you actually press on the dent.
Okay.
So it's not something I recommend a lot of regular people do. One, because it's incredibly expensive. You gotta buy a giant vise. You gotta buy a table that's not gonna move when you actually adjust it. You gotta. Oh, do you have a dent on?
Oh yeah, I've got like 3 of them on this.
I had a really bad dent once where it was on an older flute where basically this whole part kind of got like crushed.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that's very common, and that'll get out of round. So typically then you would kind of put it on that rod, and then you would hammer that out to make it round again.
Okay.
So, but like if there's a specific dent, like if I were to make a dent right here, you would kind of put the rod in, put the rod to where it lined up here, and then you would push on that dent and kind of massage it out.
I see. Okay.
And so you can actually make it go the opposite way, so that it'll create a divot where you are trying to repair the dent if you don't do it right.
Gotcha.
And so that'll kind of make the instrument look like a potato chip. Okay, so here we have on this key, we can see that there's a leak. There's air on one side and not on the other, or light, sorry. So when it comes to leaks on a saxophone, and heating up pad cups in general, unless it's flutes, and if there's adhesive behind it, we actually take a butane torch. So one of the reasons, this is something I would not recommend people do at home, but if you are trying to fix a leak, you actually take the fire and you put it against the instrument. So what that does is that melts the adhesive. And what the melted adhesive will do is it will cause the pad to drop, and when done properly, will get us to have it seal again. So as we can see, I heated it up, and it got rid of that leak.
So you essentially just reseated the pad.
Exactly, yep. So, oh gosh, the pearl just fell off.
That's a perfect example for this whole thing.
Actually, a fallen pearl is something you can do at home, and I will show you. So, you would just take super glue. This super glue is actually stuck. It's just old super glue. So you would take the super glue, put it on the pearl, put the pearl back, and that's it. That's literally how the factories adhere the pearls and things like that. So that's a simple at-home thing that you guys can do. Yeah.
So you wouldn't use that on plastic or wood?
No, never.
I that fell out and I super did
A heat gun is actually less directive.
Exactly right.
So, you know, a big challenge in instrument repair is how can I get the heat to be in a concentrated area. So for like wooden clarinets, what I actually have is I have what's called a pad cup heater. Let me actually look that up. Pad cup heater. If I can type. Oh, no, that is not English. Here's the pad cup heater. So what this is there are two graphite tongs on the end of a little thing, and what it does is when you press those tongs together, it sends a conductive electric current into it, and that will heat up the wood. So for something like wooden clarinets, that's what we use, but you can use a torch in a pinch, but very quick and very direct. Now,
could you use a soldering iron?
A soldering iron?
For like low to where it just tunes it?
I wouldn't. I don't think so. Okay, that is a problem. Take this out. So here we have a key fitting issue. So I can take this, I'm trying to figure out the best way, and you hear that click,
Yeah.
and you can kind of see maybe a little bit in the camera. It's moving left and right ever so slightly. So what that means is that the rod and the metal is not secured in between the posts. So something like that, we actually take apart and we can do what's called swedging. What swedging is swedging stretches the metal, and it'll get the metal to go to stretch and fit in between the posts. One thing I can show you guys is how to take actually, let me see if I can get this. So I will show you guys two repairs that you guys can do with your own instruments if you notice issues. Does anybody have any questions while I'm... Yes?
When you put on cork grease, how much did you put on? I always worry about putting on too much and then it kind of gets gunky and gets other places. So I tend to be skimpy, but I don't know if being too skimpy.
I think it's better to be kind of skimpy. You what I do is I put a little bit on and then I kind of rub it in with my hands and kind of spread it around. So I'll put I don't know, maybe a pea-sized amount for a clarinet tenon cork or an oboe tenon cork. Yes, over there.
So forgive me if you already answered this or said this, but how did you get into instrument repair?
So I got into instrument repair through an apprenticeship. So I have actually known this saxophone player online, Tim Lin. Some of you saxophone players might know him, but I had reached out to him and wanted to get an apprenticeship with him. So I kind of just went to his place and just learned and watched him do things. An apprenticeship is a very common thing in the industry, and since then I went from one apprenticeship to another, and now I work at one shop. So, you don't need to go to formal schooling for repair, but you do have to find the right people that are certified and trusted, and that's a hard thing to find. But when you do your own research and you find your own resources and you see how things are done properly, you can better assess somebody's work and really realize if they're a trusted source or not. Okay, so one thing that I will show you guys is how to engage and disengage a spring. So we'll take these two springs down here. So these are the springs on saxophone. These are also found on flutes and clarinets. I think pretty much on all woodwind instruments. So to take a spring out, all you have to do is unhook it from that little cradle that it's held in. So actually I'll do it here. I can't really get a good angle. So to unhook a spring, all you do is just take it out. So if you're noticing that your key is flopping, so I disengage that spring, and now this key is flopping. It's not responsive. It's just, you know, if I turn it upside down, it'll actually stay open and I can't even press it. So if you're kind of noticing that, oh, my key isn't working, you know, you want to check these spring cradles and push that spring back into place. So now with the spring back in place, works again. So that's why I recommend the spring hook, because the spring hook is designed to get in that space and kind of unhook the spring and put the spring back into place. If you notice that a key is stuck, one thing you can try is unscrewing a little bit, because sometimes when you over tighten a spring, it'll cause things to, you know, it'll cause the actual key to be smushed in too far and kind of compressed. So if you have a stuck key on an instrument, you can just come in, untighten it a little bit, and it'll help make sure that things are loose. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes?
How would you polish an instrument that's not silver? Since you talked about silver polish gloves.
So that's where kind of like the lemon pledge comes in, just something like that, because what that'll do is the lemon pledge will get underneath the gunk and like the green debris, and it will hydrate it and help you to like lift that up off the key.
And you just spray the lemon pledge through the whole thing?
Yeah, so if I wanted to take off a key and clean it, I would take this key off. You know, the leather's pretty good on this. It's a little dirty. You can kind of see in the reflection the little spots on it. So all I would do to clean the key is just spray it, take a cloth, wipe it down, and with the brass key, it's shiny again. So all that gunk kind of gets lifted up.
And does that also prevent tarnish?
Yes, yes it will. Yep, because that tarnish will like dry and end up like congealing with the metal and kind of causing the metal to just begin to disintegrate. Okay. Yes?
I have a question. So, how much knowledge should a repairman like be expected to have in actually playing the instrument? So, for example, let's say the repairman is a flautist or a clarinetist, and they play those two instruments.
Yeah.
But they may not be as knowledgeable on how to play a saxophone or oboe, I assume. Like, how much should they know about playing those instruments if they want to repair those as well?
So for those that couldn't hear with all the yelling going on, the question was, how much knowledge should I as a technician have in terms of playing the instruments? So if I was a saxophone technician and I also worked on flutes and clarinets, I would say that, you know, you should know how to play all the notes on the instrument. You know, you don't have to be a virtuoso, you don't have to have a lot of technique or anything like that, but you need to be able to know, you know, how to play all the notes on an instrument and just be able to make a clean, even sound with like focused air.
Okay.
You know, like.
What about stuff like long notes versus short notes, like more like
staccatos or something you're saying? Those aren't really as important because if like I can play a low B flat on a saxophone, you know, without any issue, then the instrument is in pretty good shape. Then it comes down to like the player and like kind of their approach to playing short versus long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question?
How would you rank from easiest to hardest instruments to work on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I've done some flutes, saxophones, and clarinets, so I only really have those to base on. But I would say that, to be honest, saxophone is probably the easiest to work on. I would say that like clarinet's in the middle, especially when it comes to the wood and everything like that, and then I would say that flutes can sometimes be the most difficult just because of how delicate and precise they are. With flutes, we have to do what's called shimming, which is taking like little discs, like little pieces of paper, and you have to put a shim on one side of the pad, and then you put the key on, and you look at it and you go, oh, well, the air's leaking out of this side now. So then you take everything apart, and then you have to take that shim out, put a new shim in on one side. You know, you can almost go crazy trying to shim a flute because it's like you have to put paper and like material in the perfect spots on the flute to get it to seal properly, whereas like a saxophone, you just heat up the adhesive. As long as there is enough adhesive and stuff, it's like it'll move how you want it to move and things like that. But not knowing the instruments, I would say that oboes are a little more like intricate clarinets because they have a lot more adjustment screws on them. So they have little screws that like move two keys at the same time and like multiple keys, whereas saxophones don't really have many of those.
How would you rank things like contrabass clarinet or?
So working on a contrabass clarinet is like working on a car. You know, they're so massive and things like that. So like, you know, it's just more time, really. I wouldn't even, you know, and because it's larger, there's more opportunity for failure. But at the same time, because it's larger, it can be easier to work with because it's not as like precise and not as like, you know, you don't need a magnifying glass to like see on a contrabass clarinet. Question?
So I have a contrabass clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend I do to make sure it doesn't like fall apart? The way out of this one.
Well, what kind of a contrabass is it?
Paperclip.
Okay, so like a LeBlanc paperclip. Okay. I mean, you know, just like earlier what I said about maintenance, it's just you just have to kind of swab it. You just have to make sure that, you know, you're storing it properly and things like that. And all instruments will go out of adjustment. You know, a larger instrument also has a little more give to it in terms of like the opportunities of it getting out of adjustment because things are larger. So a little air escaping on a large hole is not as big of a deal as a lot like a small gap on like a teeny tone hole, you know, for like a saxophone, for example. Like if a tone hole like this had a hole in it or something, that's a lot more problematic than a giant pad on a contrabass. Question?
I guess since I just was cleaning my flute, how helpful do you feel thin paper and powder paper are for keeping moisture down?
I love powder paper. Here. So I guess I should have put that in the recommended tools. Yamaha powder paper. So if you guys want to write that down or just... So powder paper, what it is it's cigarette paper with a little bit of talcum powder or like baby powder. So what this does is if you have a sticky key, like for example, a sticky G sharp on a saxophone, everybody knows that the G sharp on saxophones stick often. One way to prevent that is by using powder paper. Now, powder paper is what people use instead of the dollar trick. So saxophone players, if you guys know the dollar trick, you know, just take a random dollar, put it in your G sharp, pull it out, and then hopefully the sticking goes away. So that's the DIY version of using powder paper. the baby powder in the powder paper, when it's put on the key, will actually draw the moisture away from it, and it will dry everything, which is what causes the sticking. Sticking is created because things are moist and they're kind of sticking together because two moist surfaces are creating a little seal. So, showing you guys how to use powder paper, one side has the powder, one side doesn't. You take the side with the powder, you put it in the key, you close the key, and you take it out. I would recommend using powder paper like once every 2 months or something like that, maybe. Or if you notice sticking happening, that's when you would use it. But you have to make sure that the powder paper itself, or you have to make sure that the surface that you're using the powder paper on isn't wet, or else, or it's not, if I were to spray with the cleaner and then want to use this to help ensure that it's not sticking, I'd want to make sure that I dry it off before I use this, because then the powder will end up bunching up. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's
And that's where the cleaning paper comes in. Any other questions?
Just a follow-up on the cork grease question. You said you use like a pea-size amount. But
Yeah.
For what kind of cork? Like, I play clarinet, so like how much would you put for like the joints cork?
That's kind of where I was saying, like a pea-size amount, maybe a little larger.
Oh, that's way more than I use.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, just enough to coat
Yeah.
the whole surface.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I definitely, like you said, would avoid overdoing it.
Okay.
then
I'm
that'll,
definitely underdoing it then.
Maybe, but hey, that's better than no cork grease.
Fair.
If you do overdo it on the grease, what's the best way to get it out?
Just cleaning it off with a cloth or something, just to, draw it up. I had a question there.
Yeah, kind of twofold. What's the most common issue that you see with instruments that come to your shops? And alongside that, are there any DIY tricks that are actually good / work, like the plumber's tape on the board?
Yeah, the plumber's tape is a good DIY trick, because you just want to, because the cork is compressing, whether it's a tenon cork or neck cork or anything like that, you use that plumber's tape because it's a thin enough layer to go around it, and it just helps to get rid of that loose part that was done because it compressed. The most common issue in a saxophone, or not a saxophone shop, but the most common things are just leaks. Someone's playing and oh, I can't get my low E on my clarinet, or my C isn't playing, or oh, these notes and below don't play. That's the most common issue that I see is when something doesn't play, people are oh, now I have to go take it to someone because I can't play the full range of the instrument. So it's issues like that. You have a question?
Oh no, I was gonna say, when you were saying to put the powder paper in and you pulled it out,
Mhm.
I always cap it because the box says not to pull it out when the key is closed.
Oh, well, I've never had an issue with pulling it out with the key closed.
I was like, oh.
So,
That was actually kind of why I asked, because I was always confused of which way I was supposed to do it.
I ripped up my flute pads doing that.
So that's why.
so that would probably mean that the pads were old and brittle. So that's where then, you would want to get it looked at to see if the other pads on it are also old and brittle. Any other questions? Okay,
I don't want to take up too much time, but
it'll probably be the last question.
Okay. So for the instrument repair courses that you link to, do any of those deal with string instruments, or would you want to do more a luthier type course?
Luthier type course, yeah.
I know it's a totally different animal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for coming. This is actually my first ever panel ever, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me and everything.